A feature can look perfect until one failed API call breaks the entire user experience. In the next few minutes, you will see 13 JavaScript error handling patterns that prevent common bugs in real projects. Each example is short, practical, and ready to use. We will start with 2 patterns that stop bad data at the edge of your application before it can create confusing bugs deeper in the code. A local config file can be edited by hand, so invalid JSON is a normal failure to plan for. We place only JSON parse inside try-catch, return null when parsing fails, and print the valid configuration when it succeeds. Now we run the script and see one loaded config plus a readable configuration error instead of a crash. Let's break down why this works. JSON parse throws for the malformed string, but the catch handles that one expected failure and returns null. The loop checks for null, so it skips the bad config without stopping the deployment workflow. Now, the best practice shown here is keeping the try-catch as small as possible. This is safer because a typo or logic bug later in the function will still surface normally. Use this pattern whenever you handle a specific operation that can legitimately fail, such as parsing external data. A checkout total is too important to calculate from unchecked input. We validate quantity and price at the top of the function, then test a valid order, a string quantity, and a negative price. Now we run it, and each bad case reports exactly what needs to be fixed. Let's break down the output. The first call reaches the calculation, while the other 2 stop at a guard clause before invalid data can spread. Type error describes the string quantity, and range error describes a price outside the allowed range. Now, the best practice on screen is to validate every public function boundary with specific errors. It is better because callers can distinguish a wrong type from an invalid numeric range. Apply it to service methods, API handlers, and any reusable function that accepts outside data. Next, we will give expected business failures meaningful names and preserve the technical details that developers need to diagnose them. In a real checkout, stock can change between viewing a product and placing an order. We create out-of-stock error with useful metadata, throw it during inventory reservation, and catch it by its type. Now we run the example and produce a customer-safe message with the product and requested quantity. Let's break down why the custom class helps. The catch uses inlink sieve, so it reacts to the meaning of the failure instead of searching a text message. The metadata gives the UI exactly what it needs without exposing internal implementation details. Now, the best practice shown here is to use custom errors for expected domain failures. This is better because recovery logic stays explicit and does not depend on fragile string comparisons. Use this pattern for cases like missing permissions, expired coupons, or unavailable inventory. When a repository fails, the service layer should explain the operation that failed, not erase the technical reason. We throw a database error, wrap it in profile load error with the cause option, and print both messages. Now we run the script and see the high-level profile failure followed by the database reason. Let's break down the 2 messages. The first says that loading this customer profile failed, which is the useful service level context. The second is the original connection failure, preserved in cause for debugging and observability. Now the best practice on screen is to wrap errors with cause when crossing an architectural boundary. This is better because users get a meaningful operation level message, while engineers retain the root cause, apply it between repositories, services, API handlers, and background jobs. Finally, we will handle rejected promises during application startup and return a controlled fallback state instead of leaving an unhandled rejection. An API request during startup can succeed for one user and fail for another, so the caller needs a controlled outcome in both cases. We await fetch user profile inside try-catch, log the loaded profile on success, and return guest mode after a handled failure. Now we run both requests and watch the fallback activate for the rejected promise. Let's break down what happened. The first promise resolves and prints Ava's profile. The second promise rejects and await sends that failure directly into the catch block, where the app switches to a predictable guest state. Now the best practice shown here is awaiting risky asynchronous work inside try-catch and returning a deliberate fallback. This is better because every caller receives a known state instead of dealing with an unhandled rejection. Use it for startup requests, network calls, file operations, and database queries. Next, let's handle a common async problem: cleanup. A request can succeed or fail, but resources still need to be released every time. When a report request fails, it is easy to leave a CLI spinner running forever. Let's wrap the request and try, catch, and finally, so the spinner always stops before the next operation begins. Now we run one successful report and one failing report to see both paths. Let's break down why this works. JavaScript enters finally after the try block finishes, whether the awaited request resolves or throws. That is why both spinner sessions end cleanly in the terminal. Here's the best practice. Use finally for cleanup that must happen exactly once. This is especially useful for connections, timers, locks, files, and loading indicators, because cleanup should never depend on success alone. Now let's make unreliable integrations more resilient. The key is to retry only temporary failures, and to avoid sending every client back at the same moment. Third-party analytics endpoints can time out even when our event data is valid. Let's retry only timed out errors, stop after 3 attempts, and log each retry so the behavior stays visible. Now we run the upload and watch the third attempt recover. Let's break down the result. The retry condition checks both the error code and the remaining attempt count, so a permanent error would not be repeated by accident. Once the request succeeds, the loop returns without making extra calls. Here's the best practice. Retry only errors that are genuinely transient and always set a maximum number of attempts. Do not retry validation errors, authorization failures, or malformed requests, because repeating them will not fix the cause. A rate-limited payment provider should not be retried at the same instant by every client. Let's increase the delay after each retry and add jitter, then log the planned waits before the payment succeeds. Now we run the simulation and compare the two retry delays. Let's break down why the waits increase. Exponential backoff doubles the base delay, while jitter adds a small variation for each client. That variation helps prevent a large group of clients from retrying together after the same outage. Here is the best practice. Cap both retry delay and total attempts, then respect a server retry hint when the provider sends one. Use exponential backoff with jitter for rate limits and temporary outages, not for every failed payment request. Not every unsuccessful outcome is an exception. Business rules such as expired promotions are expected outcomes, so we can make them explicit in the return value. A promo code can be valid, expired, or blocked by a minimum order rule, and none of those outcomes is a system crash. Let's return result objects and branch on result OK so the checkout flow handles each business outcome clearly. Now we run all 3 cases and inspect the customer-facing messages. Let's break down the result shape. The success path carries a discounted total in value, while each expected rejection carries a typed business reason in error. The caller reads result OK first, so the flow stays direct and easy to test. Here's the best practice. Use result objects for expected business outcomes such as expired codes, insufficient balance, or unavailable inventory. Keep thrown errors for exceptional failures like broken infrastructure, invalid program state, or an unreachable dependency. Finally, protect the rest of the application from provider-specific details. External APIs can change their response payloads, but your domain code should keep stable error types. A CRM can return provider-specific HTTP errors that the rest of our application should never need to understand. Let's map duplicate, authentication, and outage responses into stable application errors at the integration boundary. Now we run all 3 CRM responses and handle them with application-level messages. Let's break down what changed at the boundary. The CRM-specific status codes are translated once into errors our application owns, and the handler only reacts to those stable types. This keeps provider details out of checkout, UI, and business workflow code. Here's the best practice. Map third-party errors at the integration boundary, as close to the external API call as possible. Apply this when working with CRMs, payment providers, email platforms, and any dependency whose payloads should not leak across your app. Next, we will process a real import batch without letting one bad record stop every other employee account. When an employee CSV contains one bad row, the rest of the import should still succeed. Let's build an importer that creates each independent account and keeps every outcome. We use promise, all settled, then now run the script and inspect the success and failure lists. Let's break down why this works. All settled waits for every promise and returns results in the same order as the input, so we can pair each failure with its original email. No single rejection stops the other account creations. Now let's look at the best practice. Use all settled when records are independent and you need a full report. It is better than promise all here because promise all rejects on the first failure and hides later outcomes. Now we will make a file processing stream fail in a controlled way. Instead of turning one upload error into a process crash, nightly upload jobs often read user files through node streams, and an emitted error without a listener can end the process. Let's create a small stream that delivers 2 rows and then fails while we listen for all completion paths. Now we run it and confirm the failure is reported safely. Let's break down why it stays safe. The error listener consumes emitted stream errors and resolves our promise with a failed result, so callers do not wait forever. The end handler remains ready for the normal completion path. Now let's look at the best practice. Attach an error listener immediately when a stream is created or received. Pair it with a promise or another completion contract so both successful ends and failures are handled by the caller. Finally, we will capture a failed login with enough structured context to debug it without exposing a customer's credentials. A failed login is useful for debugging, but logging the raw request can leak passwords and tokens. Let's catch an authentication error and build a structured JSON entry from only safe fields. Now we run the example and inspect the sanitized production-style log. Let's break down the log entry. The request ID lets you trace one API call while the error code groups similar failures across many requests. The sanitization layer removes secrets before JSON serialization, so the logging call never receives the raw password or token. Now let's look at the best practice. Log enough context to investigate an incident, but sanitize it before serialization. Redact credentials, tokens, personal data, and full request payloads by default, then explicitly allow only the fields your team needs. You now have 13 reliable ways to handle JavaScript errors before they become user-facing bugs. If this helped, like the video, subscribe to Dev Level Up, and comment with the JavaScript problem you want solved in the next set of real examples.